My CEO cut my salary after I built his billion-dollar success, but he never expected the quiet move that let me take back everything he tried to claim. They slashed my salary the same week we hit $3.2 billion in revenue. No warning, no meeting, just an email from HR. The subject line read, "Compensation Adjustment Notification," delivered at 7:12 in the morning, wedged between a wellness webinar invite and a reminder for today's victory toast. By noon, the entire 12th floor of Onyx Tech was buzzing with celebration. Gold confetti floated in the air, champagne flutes clinked, and the new WAN Market Leader banner hung proudly across the atrium. From a distance, it almost looked like success. Up close, it smelled like betrayal. I stood near the edge of the crowd, holding a half-empty glass of warm Prosecco, watching Grant, the CEO, glide from handshake to handshake like a man who'd personally written every line of code himself. He spotted me across the room, smiled thinly, and made his way over. "Bianca," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder like I was some kind of mascot. "Hell of a ride. Couldn't have done it without your vision." I kept my expression neutral. "And the pay cut?" I asked quietly, barely moving my lips. Grant's eyes didn't flicker. "This is just business," he replied. "We're shifting compensation structures across leadership. Everyone's adjusting. Everyone." A minute later, I overheard someone mention that Kyle, his son and now VP of Strategic Partnerships, had just received a 20% raise. As I tried to process the humiliation wrapped in celebration, a soft voice broke through the noise. "Ms. Monroe." I turned to see Issa, one of the newer interns, bright-eyed and fresh from Stanford. She had shadowed me for 2 weeks last quarter and always looked at me like I was the woman she hoped to become. "They said you might not stay long," she said cautiously. "Is that true?" Her words weren't meant to sting, but they did. I smiled faintly. "Nothing's ever certain around here, Issa. You'll learn that." She nodded, still holding a party hat in her hand like it meant something. And just like that, I realized they weren't just celebrating the company's success. They were celebrating my exit. They just hadn't told me yet. By the time I stepped back into my office, the confetti had already settled on the hallway carpet like a fading echo. I closed the door behind me slowly, the weight of the celebration pressing harder now that I was alone. The email still glowed on my monitor. I reread the line, "This is part of a broader realignment to reflect new priorities." I'd built those priorities. I sank into the leather chair I once thought I'd earned. Outside the glass wall, I watched Issa laughing with the same people who used to gather around me. She was young, magnetic, sharp. She had the energy I remembered having before it was spent building the very system that now made her visible. 3 years ago, Onyx Tech was circling the drain. They were hemorrhaging clients, failing compliance audits, and their product pipeline was dry as bone. I was brought in on a 6-month contract to stabilize growth. I stayed because I saw what it could become, and because no one else had the stomach to fix it. I didn't ask for credit, I asked for runway. I led the build of the modular energy routing system. I rewrote the licensing model. I brought in the clients they still bragged about. I was the architect, the strategist, the one who stayed late, rewrote pitches at 2 a.m, and pulled executives out of public meltdowns. And yet, somehow, I became a shadow in my own house. They never erased me outright. They just dimmed the light until I disappeared. Earlier that week, I'd submitted a revised performance deck outlining the Q2 growth drivers. It had taken hours to map correlations between buy-stream implementation and the 48% spike in client retention. Today, I opened the final version that Grant had shared with the board. My name was gone, where I had written proposed, by Bianca Monroe, head of product growth. It now read led by product team. I stared at the screen, unmoving. It was surgical, clean, intentional. They weren't trying to destroy me. They were trying to dissolve me, like sugar in boiling water. Sweet for a moment, invisible the next. The worst part, no one would question it. No one would even notice, because on paper it looked collaborative. On paper it looked like progress. And outside my office, Issa's laughter floated in again, high, effortless, rising over the hum of a company I'd built from dust. I had once been her. Now I was no one. The next morning started with an HR calendar invite. Subject line, strategic role transition discussion. No warning, no context, just an 8:45 meeting tucked into a cold white room with neutral lighting and 2 women who smiled like they'd been trained to do so. I sat down across from them, still in the same navy suit I'd worn to present the company's Q2 earnings 2 weeks earlier. That day, I had stood in front of a packed room of executives and investors and mapped out our path to a 36% margin increase. Today, I was being walked through a new opportunity to foster innovation from a mentorship angle. "We've noticed your strengths lie in vision setting and support," one of them said brightly, like it was a compliment. "With so many rising stars coming up the ranks, we think it could be a win-win if you moved into a more supportive role." Supportive, I echoed, meaning something more behind the scenes. Strategic but not as forward-facing, like stepping aside. The second woman, smaller frame, tighter smile, nodded sympathetically. "It's not a demotion, it's a repositioning, a way to amplify newer voices. It shows real leadership." I swallowed hard. The bile was rising slowly, but I kept my voice steady. "Who suggested this?" I asked. A flicker of discomfort crossed their faces. "Leadership consensus," one said. "A lot of folks admire your contributions. We just believe it's time for a shift." I knew that tone. I'd used it myself back when I had the authority to redesign teams. It was the corporate version of "thank you for your service, now kindly disappear." They wrapped the conversation with another round of empty appreciation and escorted me out with a soft, insincere "we'll follow up soon." As I walked down the hall, I heard muffled voices coming from the executive boardroom. Out of habit, I paused. The glass wall wasn't tinted today. Inside, I saw the familiar lineup of VPs seated around the oak conference table, except there was one new chair filled, by the intern. Her hair pulled back, a leather folder on the table in front of her. She was nodding confidently as Grant leaned over, gesturing toward a projection screen. That had been my seat, the one by the screen. The one where I defended our product roadmap, fought for budgets, and shut down competitors' strategies with precision. Now it belonged to someone still learning the internal Wi-Fi password. I stepped back before anyone saw me, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel strategic. I didn't feel seen. I felt like a mistake that had overstayed its welcome. I didn't go back to the office that afternoon. Instead, I went home. No calls, no meetings, just me, my old laptop, and a familiar black folder I hadn't touched in over 2 years. I pulled it from the bottom drawer of my bookshelf, dust trailing off the edges. The label on the spine read "Buy-Stream Master Agreement." The original license contract, the backbone of the billion-dollar infrastructure Onyx Tech, was now balancing on like a drunk tightrope walker. I sat at my kitchen table, flipping through the contract page by page. The smell of old ink and legalese filled the room. Every clause was familiar. I had written most of them myself with a lawyer I trusted more than any executive I'd ever worked with. Clause 802. License shall remain valid for a period of 24 months from the effective date, subject to renegotiation and renewal at least 30 calendar days before expiration. I blinked. I checked the dates again, twice. That window was closing fast. The current license expired in 21 days. 21. 3 weeks from today. Onyx Tech would lose legal access to the very software that powered 80% of their product suite unless someone submitted a renewal form, signed and approved. No one had. Not yet. I scrolled through my email inbox for anything resembling a renewal request, then my sent folder, then the shared company drive. Nothing. Then I checked my personal inbox, the one Grant used when he wanted to avoid going through channels, and there it was, buried under a string of subject lines about off-site events and quick questions. An email from 7 weeks ago. Subject: need you to sign this eventually. Body: hey, just one of those vendor form things. We'll circle back. Don't worry about it yet. There was a PDF attached, untouched, unforwarded. My fingers hovered over the trackpad as I stared at the timestamp. 7 weeks ago. He never followed up. He thought it wasn't urgent. He assumed I'd still be around, that I'd still be his safety net, his silent fixer, the nameless engine behind his public success. I closed the laptop slowly. The silence in the room changed. It thickened. For the first time in months, I wasn't just angry, I was focused. I didn't need a press conference. I didn't need revenge. I just needed to let the clock run out. One signature, one system, and everything they built on top of me would come crashing down, not because I destroyed it, but because they forgot to respect what held it together. It started with a line of code, just one. A subtle redirect buried inside a routine sync script that ran every night at 2:01 in the morning. No one noticed, not on day 1, not even on day 3. But by the end of the first week, small discrepancies began surfacing, timing delays in data retrieval, reports generating partial outputs, dashboards stalling mid-load. Harmless bugs, they'd assume, the kind of noise that happens when a system grows too fast for its skeleton to hold. But I knew better. I built the skeleton. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't insert malware or tamper with compliance. I simply started reclaiming what was mine, quietly, methodically, line by line. Every endpoint linked to BuyStream carried a silent expiration trigger. It wasn't malicious, it was protection. And now, with the contract expiring in less than 3 weeks, I had every right to withdraw my architecture, legally, surgically, undeniably. Still, I didn't expect them to notice this soon. On Tuesday at 9:42 in the morning, an email pinged into my inbox. Subject: Weird pattern in usage logs from n.jenkins@onyxtech.com. Body: Hi Bianca, sorry to bug you, but we've been seeing inconsistent syncs across the East Coast cluster. Latency spikes. Mostly logs show deviations from expected packet flows, almost like something's folding back in on itself. Weirdest part is it almost feels intentional. Could use a second pair of eyes. Thanks, Noah. Noah Jenkins, mid-level systems engineer, smart, curious, too honest for his own good. I stared at the screen, the corners of my mouth twitching into something between a smirk and a sigh. I didn't respond. I wouldn't. He wasn't my colleague anymore. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment land. They were starting to feel the absence before it had even arrived. That's the thing about being erased. You learn to become invisible on your own terms. You learn where the exits are, how the lights connect, how to make a room hum without anyone knowing where the sound comes from. And when you finally decide to leave, you can pull your presence out of the walls like breath from glass. I wasn't breaking anything. I was just reminding them what the system looked like without me. The ghost they ignored was now the shadow in their machine, and every glitch, every delay, every half-loaded chart was me waving from the dark. The message came at 10:06 in the evening while I was brushing my teeth. Subject line: dinner. No sender name, no body text, just the familiar encryption code I hadn't seen since Berlin. Only one person still used it: Naira Eddings, CEO of Salvix Energy, former rival, former almost boss, and the one person who once told me, "You don't have to outshine the system, Bianca, just outgrow it." I stared at the screen, the soft hum of my electric toothbrush trailing off. After a moment, I typed one word in reply: tomorrow. We met at a rooftop bistro in the Arts District. Naira was already seated, a glass of chilled Chablis in front of her, navy slacks sharp, sleeves rolled just enough to remind you she was always in control, but never trying too hard. She stood to greet me like nothing had happened, like 4 years of silence between us hadn't passed. "Bianca Monroe," she said with a grin. "Still allergic to press conferences, I assume? And you still pick rooftop restaurants," I shot back. "What is it with you and altitude?" She raised an eyebrow. "Perspective, darling." We laughed, and just like that, the old rhythm clicked back into place. The small talk didn't last long. Naira never wasted time. Within 10 minutes, we were looking at a tablet on the table between us, open to Salvix's current infrastructure model. "We're at a pivot point," she said. "Our systems are outdated. We've tried patching, bolting, even buying third-party integrations. None of it holds. But you," she continued, "built something that scaled Onyx into a monster, until they started feeding on themselves," I finished, not hiding the bite. She nodded slowly, lips pressing into a line. I followed the headlines, saw the glitches, and I recognized the rhythm. She tapped the screen. "That pattern? That's not failure, that's withdrawal. Controlled, precise, yours." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She leaned forward. "We want exclusive rights to BuyStream. You name your terms." I sat back, watching the city below shimmer in the dark. The offer was massive, both in reach and implication. It was more than a business deal. It was vindication, a chance to hand my creation to someone who'd actually understand it, someone who had once seen value in me when I didn't even see it myself. But before I could respond, Naira added something that stopped me cold. "Or," she said, folding her hands on the table, "would you prefer to lead the tech yourself, under your own brand?" My breath caught. She wasn't just offering a license, she was offering a launch pad. "You're not asking me to work for you," I said slowly. "No," she replied. "I'm asking if you're finally ready to stop building empires for men who can't spell the word respect." Silence hung between us like a drawn breath. For the first time in years, I didn't feel erased. I didn't feel expendable. I felt new. "Give me 3 days," I said. "You have 2, she smiled. "You're not the only ghost circling this machine." As I walked away from the table, the city lights no longer looked like walls I'd been locked behind. They looked like circuits, and I was ready to plug back in, under my name, my terms, my rebirth. The last time I walked into Onyx Tech, it didn't feel like a goodbye. It felt like the end of a transaction I never agreed to but somehow paid for with 3 years of brilliance no one could be bothered to name. I arrived at 7:08 in the morning. My ID badge still worked. The receptionist, a temp named Darren, gave me a lazy nod as I passed security. I smiled faintly. He didn't even know I was one of the reasons this building had survived 2 acquisition attempts and a near collapse in 2022. I didn't go to my office. I went straight to level B2, down a hallway most executives didn't know existed. The infrastructure access vault was at the far end, protected by steel doors, 2 security cameras, and a biometric scanner I had personally designed. Only 6 people had clearance. I was still one of them. Inside, the room was cold. Server racks blinked gently, humming like a living organism. In the back corner, a brushed aluminum safe box embedded in the wall waited for me. I punched in the code, paused, then turned the dial. Inside lay a black USB drive and a sealed envelope. I added one more thing, my original handwritten, annotated, dated schematic for BuyStream, a blueprint not just for a system, but for the silence it would leave when it was gone. Then came the final touch, a short letter printed in 14-point font on thick linen paper. No emotion, no bitterness, just fact. To the next person with enough clearance and enough humility to ask what happened, BuyStream was not abandoned. It was withdrawn, not out of spite but out of principle. You broke the contract, and worse, you broke the trust. To regain access, start with line 338 in root cluster 3 and ask yourself who really wrote it. BM. I locked the safe, wiped my fingerprints from the keypad, and left the vault. On the way out, I passed Marcy, the head of facilities. She gave me a puzzled look. "You're in early, Bianca." "Just cleaning out the last of my things," I said. She hesitated. "Are you leaving?" I nodded. "It's overdue." She touched my shoulder gently. "You made this place work, just so you know." That landed harder than she probably meant it to. Near the elevator, I spotted Isa, bright-eyed as ever, coffee in one hand, her new Salvix-branded tablet in the other. I blinked. Was she preparing to jump too? She rushed over when she saw me. "Miss Monroe," she said softly, "are the rumors true?" I looked her in the eye. She wasn't naive. "Not anymore." "Did we lose you?" she asked. I smiled. "No, you never had me." She stood frozen as the elevator doors closed between us. I didn't turn back. As I walked through the lobby, sunlight streamed through the high glass ceiling, landing on the company's mission statement etched in stone, built on integrity, driven by vision. They never understood what either of those words meant, but they would soon because some exits aren't escapes, they're entrances to something bigger. The first crack came at 8:07 that morning. A panicked Slack message from the DevOps channel, "All dashboards are stuck in loop. Revenue data won't pull. ETA?" Within 6 minutes, the finance team chimed in. "Client portals are down. Can't access quarterly analytics. Getting 503s. By 8:30, it wasn't just bugs. It was a pattern. And by 9:15, the entire East Coast infrastructure began to unravel. I wasn't there, of course. I was sitting in a quiet corner cafe downtown, black coffee in hand, watching the alerts unfold on my personal diagnostic dashboard, a private version of BuyStream I'd built years ago for early troubleshooting. They never thought to revoke my passive monitoring keys. Every blinking red node felt like an exhale, a letting go. I watched from a distance as my absence slowly bled into every corner of their operations. The data silos I designed to be fault-tolerant began to choke. Auto-scaling protocols froze. Systems that once boasted 99.9% uptime were now stalling for 7, 8, 10 full minutes, then longer. At 9:52, I received a message from Noah Jenkins, the engineer who had reached out days earlier. "It's spreading. Not just sync delays anymore. Whole segments are ghosting. Grant is asking questions." "Don't respond, I know. Just please tell me it's not beyond repair." I didn't reply. By now, inside the Onyx Tech War Room, Conference Hall C, the energy had shifted from denial to full-blown panic. Grant had flown back early from Chicago, looking haggard and furious. His son Kyle sat beside him, speechless for once. Issa, somehow present, hovered near the whiteboard tracking outage zones in real time. A senior VP, Delaney Shaw, slammed her tablet on the table. "This isn't accidental," she hissed. This is targeted, controlled withdrawal. Nothing's being erased, just disconnected. Someone else whispered what most had been thinking. Did she do this? Grant looked up slowly. For a moment, silence settled over the room like fog. Then he scoffed. Bianca? She's not that kind of woman. His words hung there, dismissive, patronizing, wrong, because he hadn't seen the version of me that left a blueprint behind. He hadn't read the line in my resignation letter that wasn't sent to HR but folded into the safe inside the server room. He hadn't thought someone like me would walk away without screaming, without breaking something. But I didn't need to break anything. I just stopped holding it together. By 10:41, Salvix had already released a statement teasing a groundbreaking partnership in enterprise optimization. Rumors swirled. Clients began making calls. 3 contracts were paused, 2 were canceled outright. Stock slipped 4 points in under an hour. Still, I didn't flinch. I just watched. Let them scramble. Let them trace the lines they never thought to follow. Let them learn the hard way what happens when you build your empire on borrowed brilliance and then forget to renew the lease. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. It was balance. And it was just the beginning. It was 11:05 in the morning when the Salvix logo illuminated the giant LED screen behind the glass podium. The air inside the tech convention center buzzed with anticipation. Investors, analysts, reporters, and executives packed the rows, clutching notepads and recording devices. Whispers filled the space. Salvix had promised something unprecedented, a total reinvention of enterprise infrastructure, but no one knew exactly what they were about to see. Then Naira stepped up to the podium, calm, elegant, and already in command. Thank you all for joining us today, she began, her voice strong but warm. At Salvix, we've always believed that true innovation doesn't scream. It builds, it learns, it evolves quietly until the right moment to speak. She paused. That moment is now. The lights dimmed. A promotional video played. Fast cuts of disrupted industries, crumbling old systems, overworked data streams, then a sudden shift to clarity. Clean dashboards, real-time optimization, seamless performance under pressure. Then came the name Powered by Banta. A new logo appeared, sleek, silver-lined, unfamiliar to most. And then, as the crowd watched in stunned silence, a second figure stepped onto the stage. Me. There were no theatrics, no music, just me walking to the microphone in a navy suit with the Bevanta logo pinned to my lapel. I stood beside Naira, looking directly into the sea of cameras in disbelief. For those wondering where I've been, I said evenly, I never left the system. I just rebuilt it. Gasps echoed. Vanta isn't just a technology provider, I continued. It's the backbone behind the Salvix Renaissance. The architecture, the predictive engine, the scalability you're seeing. It was designed, tested, and secured by people who refuse to be erased. People like me. In a production booth across town, Issa sat frozen, eyes glued to the live stream. She had skipped a team meeting just to watch, sensing something seismic was coming. Now her fingers trembled above her keyboard. A tear slipped down her cheek. On the screen, the comment section exploded. Wait, is that the same Bianca who disappeared from Onyx? She was the system. Tell me they didn't fire her. Tell me she walked. They did fire me, Issa wanted to type, but even now she wasn't sure if they knew they had. Back at the conference, I closed my remarks with quiet finality. I used to believe legacy was something given. I've since learned it's something you build, and this time, I'm putting my name on it. The room erupted, applause, cameras flashing, the roar of realization settling over everyone at once. Salvix had won the future, and I was the architect. I glanced at Naira. She smiled but didn't speak. She didn't have to. Behind us, the Bevanta interface lit up on the main screen, and beneath it, 3 words blinked into focus: system authenticated. BM, not just initials, a signature, a reclamation, and above all, a triumph. The elevator doors opened to silence. No fanfare, no assistants waiting, no launch banners like the ones I once printed for someone else's success. Just a long corridor of glass and steel leading to the highest floor of the Bevanta tower, my tower. At the end of that corridor was the office I had designed in my mind long before I ever signed a lease or formed a company. Floor-to-ceiling windows, no logos, no corporate mottos, just light, air, and the city stretched below. Mine now, not as a contributor, but as a founder. I walked to the desk. Simple, elegant, empty except for a matte black laptop and a square cardboard box. I opened it slowly, already knowing what was inside, the nameplate they had pulled from my office wall at Onyx Tech the day after my salary was cut. The one facilities never returned but quietly dropped in a storage bin as if my name had expired. I picked it up, brushed the dust away, and placed it on the bookshelf behind my desk, not as a memento of failure, but as proof that I had survived being erased. I had become something bigger because of it. There was a soft knock on the door. Lana, my chief of staff, entered with a tablet and her usual sharp smile. "Bianca," she said, "IPO paperwork's cleared. It's official. Vanta goes public in 10 days. I nodded. She handed me a second folder, this one printed. "Thought you'd enjoy this too." The headline read, "Former Onyx Tech CEO under investigation for breach of fiduciary duty." Grant's face looked smaller than I remembered. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. "And one more thing," Lana added. "Salvix wants permission to go public about the real owner of the Vanta." That was the final step. For years, Salvix had been the face while I was the force behind it all. 82% equity, 100% control, a shadow empire built on the ashes of betrayal. I smiled. "Tell them yes." She left, and I walked toward the window. The city below pulsed with energy, unaware that everything had changed. Not with noise, not with headlines, but with quiet, focused reclamation. There was no applause, no farewell speeches, no viral clips, just me, my name, my system, and finally, my freedom. Sometimes silence is louder than revenge.